Okay, let's get this open. Okay, I thought we had something to deliver today, but I guess not. The sky is overcast and a slight breeze sends a shiver down my spine. Today the air feels dry in my throat. In other words, perfect weather for a duel. Raphael has cleared out anyone loitering by the pavilion, and I had to explain to him that we wouldn't actually be needing any tea. Instead, I told him to get training swords, which he did without further comment. When he returns, however, his thoughts are as cloudy as the sky. Are you sure this is a good idea? My apologies, Raphael. You did say something grand was needed. In this garden, Prince Aurelius once wanted to test my abilities. Today, however, I'm the one seeking him out, trying to stand on the same ground. I pace back and forth to keep my limbs warm and my thoughts from running wild. Raphael, ever a bastion of calm, stands by the stairs with the sheathed swords in his arms. Perhaps tea would have been a better idea after all. Wouldn't that have been a sight to behold, Aurelius showing up ready to fight, only to see nothing but a beautifully laid out tea set? I chuckle to myself at the thought, and Raphael gives me a quizzical look. When I open my mouth to explain, however, the doors to the garden suddenly swing open. We both turn to look. My breath catches as two familiar figures exit. Forcing myself to stand still, I watch their approach, which feels tortuously slow. The prince doesn't break eye contact, so I find myself mesmerized by his gaze. All my apprehension quickly melts away as if it never existed in the first place. Finally, he stops a few feet from me and I give him a deep bow. He simply nods in return. Our seconds, Raphael and Harris, stand a few steps ahead of us. It's Raphael's soothing and clear voice that breaks through the silence. Lady Rosencruz wishes to challenge Prince Aurelius to a duel, and His Highness would like you to know that he accepts. I look from the two servants to the prince, who seems impossibly relaxed. Raphael, the weapons. Raphael offers a sword to Prince Aurelius first, who then draws it from the sheath and causes a clear metallic rasp to cut through the air. Next, he hands me mine. As he does so, he leans in and whispers, "Please be careful. We've done this before." I murmur, trying my best to sound confident. Raphael steps back as I draw my sword. "Before these witnesses, let it be known the challenge has been offered and accepted. Until first blood or capitulation." Silence falls for a second, then suddenly the prince adds, not as a question, but as a statement, "Or death." The two servants turn a shade paler. After that, Prince Aurelius shoots me a cold glare, as if asking, "Do you have enough resolve for that, Rosencruz?" If he expected any doubts, I refuse to give him any. Instead, I steel myself and lift my sword. "Or death." Aurelius's lips twist into a smirk as he also lifts his weapon. "On guard." The two of us square off, keeping our swords ready for both attack and defense. However, neither of us dares make the first move. How long has it been since we last sparred? 4 weeks? More? Despite the heartbeat hammering in my chest, despite my hand being slick with sweat, anticipation surges through me. I've missed this. Finally, I thrust forward. Ha! Aurelius deflects it by moving his blade upwards, then angles it down to counterattack. His pattern is familiar, so I twist to the side and easily dodge it. He pivots on his foot and attacks from the left, but I catch his sword with mine and we clash. When I meet his gaze, I spot satisfaction in his light-coloured orbs. Swish. As if embarrassed to be caught, the prince lashes out with small diagonal strikes, forcing me back step by step. The sound of our blades singing rises into the chilly air, gradually approaching a crescendo. I twirl away and step back, but Prince Aurelius doesn't follow. We stand several paces apart, my blade shivers in the air while his stays still. The two of us circle each other, weapons held high. In the corner of my vision, I see Harris and Raphael standing next to each other in strained silence. Whenever we fight, Prince Aurelius has a simple strategy: either overwhelm me with a whirlwind of steel, or keep his distance and make me approach. He could strike me from afar and jump back to avoid a response, or use his quick reflexes and fluid footwork to dance around me until I'm reeling from exhaustion. He does the same in social situations. Being aloof and standoffish, to the point of rudeness, he maintains a superior position. Yeah! Swish. I attack and the prince dances away. Just as easy as I predict his movements, he understands mine. When I move, he raises his blade to meet me. There's a subtle change in his grip, so I prepare for another onslaught of strikes. In a way, this feels intimate, unlike anything I've shared with anyone else. I may not often understand what's going on through his mind, but when we're in danger, all I need to do is look in his eyes for my chaotic thoughts to settle. It's as if as if our minds are aligned. Huh? My eyes widen at his sudden remark and I stumble. The prince's sword glints in the sunlight. Despite losing my composure for a moment, I manage to bring up my own to catch his. Letting it slide off the edge, I steer his sword along my body. The dull metal glides harmlessly over my shirt. Had it been sharp, it would have cut deep. Unfortunately, the sensation still sparks an instinctive reaction. I gasp and stumble back, holding my side as if it actually hurts. Although this wasn't exactly intentional, I see a chance to lay a trap. And I'll take it. My sword falls towards the ground. Prince Aurelius lowers his weapon as well, and for half a second, I think I see a look of concern flash across his face. Do you declare fit? Before Harris has time to finish, I launch myself forward. The prince's temporary concern changes to surprise and then anger as I finally break through his defenses. I grasp tightly at his left arm, not allowing him to raise his sword anymore. Ha! Raising my other arm, I try to slash his side with my own blade. He grapples back, his free hand catching my wrist with a grunt while I'm mid-swing. I pull him sideways and our legs get entangled. Your Highness! Lady Rosencruz! We fall, grappling with our swords. Our faces are mere inches apart and our teeth gritted as we test our strength. Prince Aurelius channels his unconcealed anger into our fight, so I can barely keep his arms under control. We roll until I am on top. I force both of the prince's hands to the ground, his dark hair spreading beneath us like black velvet. The smell of flowers envelops me. Our eyes meet, and I realize with shock that the anger from before has cooled. Instead, Aurelius is smiling. The world disappears, and for a moment I imagine leaning in and... Ouch! A knee connects with my abdomen. Losing my grip on his sword arm, I return to my senses just in time to roll off as he stabs me. I feel a sting. Did he hit me? Adrenaline is pumping, so I have no time to check. We roll away from one another and get up on our hands and knees. Impressive feint, even if it was just a momentary distraction. The prince catches his breath, and when he moves again, it's with renewed caution. I lift my arm, only to find that my hand is stained ruby red. Looking down, I see the dark, wet patch on my chest where his sword must have hit me. Harris looks from Prince Aurelius to me, then clears his throat. First blood has been drawn. Lady Rosencruz, do you yield? I glance at the prince, who is still in a ready stance. Strength ebbs from me with every heartbeat, but he watches me like I might still surprise him. He seems more wary than usual, though. There is almost a begrudging respect presence in his stare. It might not be even ground I was aiming for, but the understanding that many of our thoughts and actions align might be enough for now, even if I had to bleed to get it. I nod at Harris and let my sword fall to the ground. I yield. Harris looks at the prince. Your Highness, do you accept? The terms of our duel did state or death if he wants. Prince Aurelius could demand that the duel continues. But he slowly lowers his sword. A long, ragged breath then escapes me. I accept. Raphael rushes over to me a moment later, somehow in possession of several white cloths dipped in something warm and smelling of herbs. I told you to be careful. It doesn't pay to be careful all the time, Raphael. Sometimes you simply have to take risks. I learned that lesson from... Hey, that hurts. Raphael clicks his tongue in a rare display of annoyance, pressing the warm cloth against my skin. I don't dare look down at the wound. Whatever salve he's using, it stings. It will definitely heal, but it may leave a scar. Aurelius visibly relaxes at Raphael's diagnosis. Then he gives me a slight nod. I return it, barely able to hide my smile. Tricking each other, rolling around in the mud and grappling? What are you two? Royals at court or 5-year-olds? I feel my heart soften at Raphael's blatant show of concern. I also can't help but be amused by the fact that he actually called Prince Aurelius a kid. Please don't worry so much, Raphael. I'm not that reckless. Then I hear the prince murmur something. You're as nosy as a child. I prefer to call myself curious. You're as willful as one. I prefer to say that I'm determined. And you're very, very, very obstinate. Your Highness, you don't mince words, do you? I expect a snort, another sarcastic remark, or perhaps a raised eyebrow, but instead he smiles. Not one of those sardonic, all-knowing smiles either, but the most genuine curve of his lips I've ever seen. My mouth nearly falls open in shock. I didn't think you needed coddling, Valkii. The sound of my name rolling off his tongue leaves me dumbfounded, and our seconds as well. Both Raphael and Harris freeze and steal a glance at the prince. By the time I come back to reality, however, Aurelius is already gone. Raphael continues to gently remonstrate me while he bandages my wound. A shadow falls over us and I look up. You're playing a very dangerous game. Despite his grim words, Harris seems more amused than anything else. In response, I simply shrug. It hurts, so that shrug quickly turns into a wince. Stop moving. If you insist on sticking your nose in His Highness's business, which you clearly do, then perhaps you should try speaking to Councillor Gabrielle. I believe she may be able to enlighten you. Still, no direct audience with Ariel. It's getting late. My mouth is leaving me. Still, no direct audience with Aurelius. I completely forgot his name then. What the fuck? My brain. With Aurelius then, I suppose I should be happy I can ask about his circumstances. Why the sudden approval? Harris shrugs. You've shown you can and will stand up to the prince. It's the first time I've seen someone wanting to keep up with him, let alone being able to. I go quiet and blood rushes to my ears. How am I supposed to respond to that? Harris glances at Raphael and the two of them share an unreadable look. Raphael, could you let Sala sew her up? If she has the time. I am a perfectly good medic, though. Harris makes a meaningful, elongated aha sound, then grins as Raphael frowns. I'm so surprised I almost forget my injury. Was that supposed to be a joke? From Harris? Better than you. Off you go. Raphael waves Harris away and he gives us both a bow before he hurries off to Prince Aurelius. Do we have to get Sala involved? You're welcome to ask Prince Aurelius to heal you as well. I suppress a shudder. Sala, please. Okay, this should be... Okay, my main focus during the last week was on how to communicate with Aurelius, and there were so many requests, so many things to do. The glass beads. Yes, I did it, don't worry. Okay, no one else. The merchant's approval is the lowest somehow, but I've pretty much tried to do everything possible to make everybody like me. Is it really raining that hard outside? God, I'm getting like scared by shadows. Okay, I'm not sure what else I need right now, so I'm not going to bother. Wait, what is the date? Is the 45th week next time, which requires me to have a lot of stuff, which I do already have. Well, that's good. And a lot of charisma. Aurelius's stuff just stops coming up at some point. So I'm a wee bit confused. Aurelius's stare pierces me, as serious as I have ever seen him. For one cold heartbeat, I wonder if he even suspects me. Harris did tell me to find Lady Gabrielle after all, and what Harris did, the prince ought to know. But then, Aurelius gives a small nod to signal his support. I smile back, relieved. Good evening, my Lord Regent, Your Highness. Rumours have it that you, the royal tutor, are enamored with Aurelius. I beg your pardon? According to the rumour, you are enamored Aurelius, who is actively courting Lady Gabrielle. As you were not able to come in between them, you murdered Lady Gabrielle out of jealousy. The baseless gossip has gotten that ridiculous. Yes. Let's see if we can skip again. We need proof, hard evidence of her guilt and your innocence. Your word alone means nothing to them. The prince is right. We must present irrefutable evidence that a member of Gabrielle's own entourage is her killer. Otherwise, I do not see how we can avert war. Can we skip again? Yep. Investigating the escort will be our top priority. I shall see to it no stone is left unturned. Oops, my bee. We shall unveil the culprit behind this atrocity. The Lord Regent furrows his brows. Blah blah. I second the proposal. Ishbel bears watching. Why them? They've always served us very well. Of course, I don't mean to imply otherwise. However, back then, yeah, we've already heard this, it seems like your intention to keep me out of trouble did not work, Your Highness. Aurelius's lips curl in the predatory rictus. It takes me a moment to realize it is a smile. To murder an ambassador at the heart of the royal palace, it is an affront to Eskier as much as Marin. There is a heavy price to pay for whoever engineered this. Our enemies are becoming more devious all the time. With gentlemen, I am always a gentleman, but knaves shall find me a knave and a half. Sounds like they won't stand a chance against you. They will not. The biting certainty with which Aurelius pronounces those words feels strangely reassuring. Aurelius looks me squarely in the eye. This incident shall be resolved as soon as possible, Valkii. This I swear. Our eyes meet, and in that instant I see our minds are in perfect accord. I trust you. I will not let you down. His eyes glint with what seems like newfound conviction. The distance between us from the past week seems to have disappeared, and I smile with relief. Now, if there is nothing else... The Lord Regent gets up, followed by Aurelius making ready to leave. One more thing, my lord. Aurelius nods approvingly, immediately seeing the sense of my suggestion. Ceridwen and Marigold are exceptional both in their own rights. They can be very useful for us. Besides, Marigold seems to consider you a friend, I believe. So I believe also. We will do what we can to win them both over to our side. Now, with that settled... The Lord Regent stands up once again. Take care, my lord. I must not keep you any longer. I catch Aurelius's eyes. Reading my thoughts, he moves his head ever so faintly in a barely perceptible shake. Right, that's when Nazir isn't there. All of them have a request for me this time. What? I think I've already done that one, so that's fine. Oh no, wait, these are fine. Talk to Ishbel. Okay, so what are they? There's a lot of them. I don't have a lot of money, so what's the one we need the first, which is... Oops, what am I doing? The first one we need is this one. It's not that much to synthesize, thankfully. And then the next one we'll need is the... Oops, why do I keep doing that? Is this, which I purposefully did. Although I don't know how Nazir can do that when he's not even here. No, he is here. Oh, he hasn't left yet. Okay. Alright, so we did that, but we are lacking this one. How much is that again? Isn't that really expensive? No, it's not. Okay. Alright. Classes. His wind is probably a bit much. His water is probably a bit much. I don't even know why he's still doing water. I don't know why he's still doing that either. Okay. Go back to darkness. Alright. Jura Toxifera. So, she was the one behind the incident at the Royal Hunt. I know this one. What you have here is enough to blah blah blah. Now, we can make the spices, and then we don't have to worry about literally anything. There's just not anything for me to do here. Nazir is still here. I see. What should I do next? Against my very expectations, Prince Aurelius's room doesn't feel cold. Oh wow. I take in the dark pattern of the tapestry, the flickering of the candle flames, and the warm fragrance of spices as my feet sink into the thick carpet. At the table, Harris finishes setting out a variety of steaming delicacies. I see pot roast accompanied by an assortment of vegetables, soup, and even buttery scones for desserts. Harris turns to me, pride gleaming in his eyes. Before I can make sense of it, he bows and exits the room, closing the door behind him. For the first time, I'm alone with Aurelius in the vicinity of his chambers. He sits a bit farther away from the table, leaning forward in an angle that lets him rest his elbows on his thighs. Staring at the glass of wine in his hands, he seems to be reminiscing. The scene oddly reminds me of the first time I talked to him, a shattered glass, a simple disagreement, an apology that was spoken for what feels like ages ago. So much has happened ever since. A smile tugs at the corner of my mouth as I stride forward, moving to stand beside the chair opposite to him. Is this spot taken? I notice the barest hint of amusement in his eyes as he glances at me, just for a second before looking away. I don't see anyone else. I can't help but chuckle, prompting Aurelius to turn to me with a smile. I would never have imagined that those words could sound so inviting coming from his lips. Take your seat. As I do, I take in the variety of dishes on the table. The beef is perfectly roasted and topped with a sprinkle of chopped green herbs, nicely contrasting against the dark colour of the meat. The vegetables are fried, crispy, and shining under the candle flames. The soup is crystal clear, and a small amount of grated parmesan is sprinkled on top. These dishes differ greatly from the kitchen's usual menu. Harris prepared everything himself. Harris? With a nod, Aurelius raises a knife, cuts a slice out of the meat, and begins dining. I follow his lead by taking a small sip of wine, the sweet note of fruits melting on my tongue. He has been preparing my meals for as long as I can remember. My mother went into seclusion before I was a full month old and entrusted me to Harris to raise. I freeze mid-motion, my own cutlery hanging above the plate. Aurelius, unlike me, continues as if the topic he raised was nothing unusual or inconvenient to discuss over dinner. Noticing my hesitation, he lifts his eyes to meet mine, a sardonic smile curves on his lips. Curious? As your highness mentioned, I'm as nosy as a child. He chuckles before cutting off another slice of meat, bringing it to his mouth and chewing slowly. Just as I thought the matter to be finished, Aurelius speaks up again. Mother was the only child of the last Duke of the Kingdom. Everyone else died at the king's hand during the aristocratic war. My grandfather saw great potential in the late king, so he gave him full military support under one condition. He has to take your mother as his wife after becoming king. Yes. However, at the time, the king and the late queen were already betrothed, so she could only be married in as a concubine. He didn't fight for his daughter to become the official wife. Despite the betrothal, the late queen came from a merchant background. In terms of military support, there is none, so your grandfather could have fought for the position if he wanted to. That is so, but he didn't. That's quite humble of him. Not everyone would give up the opportunity to become the familial father of a king, unless he had other plans. The glint in Aurelius's eyes tell me I hit the nail right on the head. Putting together all the hearsays I have caught during the past weeks, I make a wild guess. He tried to assassinate the late queen. Correct. After giving birth to Nazir, the queen's health was already deteriorating, but for unknown reasons, or perhaps through sheer willpower, she kept on living. My grandfather was a strategic person, and above all, he was patient. He was willing to wait until the queen died. However, an event occurred that caused his patience to shatter. Your birth. He nods. My mother gave birth to a son. If the queen died and she fought for it, she could have become the next in line, changing me to the crown prince. Grandfather didn't just want to be the father to a queen, he wanted to become a grandfather of a future king. But he was exposed. Quite ironic, isn't it? Grandfather knew he couldn't defeat the king through military might, hence he humbly bowed his head, but alas, the last Duke of Escia couldn't survive due to his greed. The king ordered your maternal family to be executed. Except for my mother. For sentimental reasons? No, the king had no affections for her, that wasn't a secret. He went as far as to never visit mother's chambers again after their wedding night, making many people doubt my legitimation. That... Aurelius states it so bluntly that I don't know how to comment. I try to detect any trace of resentment in his voice, but end up finding none. He averts his eyes, seeming to be considering before speaking up again. Who knows what the real reason was? Perhaps it was a mood. As he announced that my mother had nothing to do with the assassination attempt, she was released, but she went into seclusion immediately after. Because the nobles at court didn't believe her, and she didn't want to make it difficult for you. The statement dies on my tongue. Strangely, I find this reasoning to be the same as Prince Aurelius's as he kept his distance from me. I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Despite the royal family clarifying that I had no chance of succeeding the throne, even now, there are many noble houses that wish for me to become the next king. Perhaps they had good relations with my grandfather. This is no secret, and the Moranian nobility wanted to make use of it. Perhaps they thought if they mention it often, I may consider fighting for the position. They wanted to incite internal conflict between you and Prince Seren, preying on Escia while the royal family is weakened. At least, that's how Ishbel tried to do it. Aurelius nods, taking a sip of wine. Throughout our conversation, the food on his plate had still mysteriously made its way into his stomach while my own is starting to grow cold. Thinking of Harris's prideful look, I tried to force myself to eat. However, the heaviness of the story has robbed me of my appetite. Even Aurelius's nonchalant attitude to it didn't help. I heave a sigh. I thought it was weird for her to ask me who I think would be better fit for the throne, in public no less. She hid well. Harris experienced great difficulties finding the one adding fuel to the gossips. I assume she spread the gossips during tea parties. It would be hard for Harris, as he will not be invited to them, and neither are you. It's remarkable how society ladies, though underestimated by many, can spread gossips faster than anyone, and quite unnoticeable at that. Nobody would suspect the nobles to have heard those things from their own wives, after all. After receiving help from Duke Gronos and his men, we thought Councillor Gabrielle was the one spreading them. Who knew by trying to sound her out, I allowed Ishbel to add another ridiculous rumour on top. The one of him courting the councillor. I can't help giving a wry smile. Thinking about it now, it was quite stupid of me to chase after you to offer my help. Even if I could have done something, alone by associating with me, the hearsay would only grow worse. Shifting momentarily in his seat, Aurelius crosses his arms, leaning both elbows on the table as he looks at me, with eyes full of mirth. He speaks up at length with a very insincere voice. Indeed, you made me feel so troubled. At first, I was supposed to be courting Gabrielle to attend Marin's military power, but at the same time, my tutor and youngest heir to the Rosencreuz dynasty is fighting for my favor. Such a clingy lover. Firmly pushing down a blush, I daringly stare into his eyes, refusing to let him get the last word every time. Whether I am a clingy lover or not, you will know. I hear a sharp intake of breath before Aurelius pales, turning away, something he does, I realize, when he's embarrassed. Smiling in satisfaction, I still cannot help curling my fingers onto my vest, heart racing from my bold words. In any case, as the gossips had a lot to do with you, and you must have felt unsettled, your actions may be forgiven. Thank you, Your Highness, for your generosity. Aurelius ignores my sarcasm. In a relaxed atmosphere, we continue dining. The conversation leads to old stories about my siblings, while Aurelius speaks of growing up in court. There isn't a lot to talk about, but there isn't any awkwardness either. When Harris returns to clear the table, I decide that it's time to turn in for the night. But before I can go, Aurelius stops me by firmly gripping onto my hand. I cast him a confused look, but he merely gives Harris a silent instruction. The older man leaves the room once more. Oh, he's blushing. I'm dying. I'm dying. I'm dying. Aurelius's palm is cold, but I detect a slight blush on his cheeks and a tremble of his eyelids. He tugs softly at me to come closer, and I comply. Holding my gaze in askance, he softens his grip as if giving me the chance to step back if I wanted to. When a minute passes and I don't, Aurelius leans in. In comparison to weeks ago, I'd consider this kiss to be tame, with his lips softly dancing on mine and a palm pressed on my back, holding me in place. The shaky intake of breath that I get when my fingers curl into soft strands of hair makes me smile. I feel unexpectedly calm. For the past few weeks, I was aware that we'd eventually end up here. A heartbeat later, Aurelius gently licks at my lips before letting go and stepping back. You should return. He stands a few steps away, resolutely refusing to look at me, and I notice with delight that he's definitely blushing. A teasing remark is already on the tip of my tongue, but before I can speak, Aurelius opens the door. Good night. Come on. Shoving me out the room when I clearly want to get down. Come on. With that, he shoves me out of the room. I stand in the corridors for a while, and I'm thankful there aren't any servants close to Aurelius's chambers to witness that moment. Such a self-contradictory individual. He can be as fierce as he can be gentle. In one night, he can tease me endlessly about matters of the heart, but he would also be embarrassed after being actually affectionate. There are so many opposing facets to his personality that I never know what to expect. Still, each side of him pulls at my heartstrings all the same. Alright. I will probably stop it here, and I'll probably stop for the night. I'm kind of hungry. I haven't eaten much today, so I kind of want to eat, and then we'll finish this tomorrow. But don't get me wrong, I am sad to stop. This game is infectious. It has infected me, and I want to keep playing, and I feel weird if I don't, and I feel a bit sad when I'm not playing. So yeah. I don't know. It's good. And I don't know how the story will differ, if it will differ, how much it will differ. We'll see. But it's interesting that the romance is already starting when it felt like it took so long for it to happen with Seren. So yeah. Anyway, I will see you in the next video. Bye!